Hello and welcome to Sober Banter. My name is Rachel and we have a guest today. His name is David M. And we are getting very lucky. We have another gentleman who is sharing his experience that has 40 years, almost 41 sober. Welcome, David. What's your sobriety date?
June 30th, 1984.
If you want to share a little bit of your story.
I came to sobriety. I had my third DUI, and the last night I drank myself into a blackout, a bad car accident. Total two automobiles, mine and somebody else's. I don't remember much of what happened that night. I was so drunk. Woke up in ICU in the hospital the next morning. Things plugged into my chest, and I didn't know how I got there. And I woke up to a doctor and a cop standing over my hospital bed. The cop was a guy that I didn't know really at all, only from playing against him in a basketball league, and I knew who he was, but he was in the station that night when I was brought into the station. I don't remember that at all. So he came to the hospital the next morning to see how I was doing, which was very nice of him. I haven't seen him since. And the doctor was just checking on me. And later on that morning, my father came to see me in the hospital, and he pointed to all this stuff that was plugged into me. I had a broken collarbone. I had some other chest injuries, and my drinking had driven him nuts for the entire time I drank. And he just pointed to this stuff that was plugged into me, and he said, "Does this tell you something about yourself?" And I said, "Yeah, I need help." And that's the first time I can remember telling him or anyone else that I needed help. Help for me up to that point was like, take this jackpot, go away. Loan me $100, loan me $1,000, all outside stuff, not the kind of help I needed. Laying in that hospital bed, I knew something had to change. I didn't know what. I didn't even know it was going to involve drinking, but I knew drinking had put me in this position I was in. And I was in the hospital for 5 days. I got out and I went to see my lawyer to find out what was going to happen in court. And he had defended me before, but we weren't friends. I didn't feel like he knew me well. It was strictly a lawyer-client relationship. And when I walked into his office, I did what I always did. I started to lie and make up excuses about what happened that night. And he cut me off right away. And he said, "You have to stop drinking." And I said, "Do you have any suggestions?" He said, "Try AA." Third DUI, there was a possibility I could have gone to prison. Because by then they were sending people, repeat offenders away. I knew that was a possibility. But he said, "I can keep you out of jail, but you have to stop drinking. You're going to lose your license for at least a couple of years." So he made arrangements for me to start going to meetings, AA meetings, with a friend of his who was sober like 10 years, complete stranger. This guy brought me to meetings pretty much every night, different meetings he was used to going to. And even from the first meeting, I could identify with some of the things I heard, the drinking the people did, their war stories, the trouble they got themselves into. But I wasn't ready to call myself an alcoholic. This went on for like a good month or so. And as we were going to meetings every night, going to AA meetings felt like a second job. I had a job that I held down despite my drinking. But I'd go to work. I used to run. I'd go out for a run, and then it was time to go to an AA meeting, and I'd meet this guy at the meeting. And I also noticed that I was feeling a lot better. I wasn't passing out. I wasn't blacking out. I was sleeping better. I was remembering going to bed at night. And was saying to myself, I was waiting to go to a meeting one night. There might be something to this not drinking and sobriety. That's what I attributed it to, because it had been over a month since I had had a drink. And I went to a meeting, and the guy said, "If you can no longer drink in safety, you're an alcoholic." And I don't doubt that somebody had said that at a meeting before. This night, my ears were wide open, and I heard it clear as a bell. I thought about that. It had been a long time since I've been able to take a drink in safety. I was never a daily drinker. I never get into a jackpot every night I drank. Sometimes I went out and drank and got home without incident. But I had had a lot of jackpots along the way during my 20 years of drinking. And then people said, "Keep coming here and you'll hear your story," which I didn't believe. Then I heard my story shortly thereafter. And that's when I kind of counted myself, and I said to myself, these people aren't bullshitting me. It's like they're reading my mail. People said, pray to have the obsession to drink be lifted. And I never prayed, but after about 2 months, the obsession was lifted. I wasn't thinking about drinking all the time. I attribute that to AA, 12-step, and the people in it. And I started to identify as an alcoholic. And I've been sober ever since. The first 2.5 years, all I did was not drink and go to meetings. every day, twice a day on weekends.
That was about my story too.
Yeah.
I lived there.
I had made my mind up. I was never going to speak at a meeting. I said to myself, I didn't tell anyone else this, but I won't drink and I'll come here every day, but I'm not going to speak. I'm not going to be like all these other people who are pouring their hearts out and talking about their tortured souls. And then I'd sit in meetings and, 12-step meetings, well, around here anyway, they have them on a banner on the wall. You can't miss them. And I'd read them. And some of those things were up there, searching and fearless moral inventories. And when I was wrong, promptly admit it. And prayer and meditation and, being powerless. Those were part of my repertoire when I was drinking. I hadn't gone to like an actual 12 and 12 step meeting. There's a guy I'd become friendly with, and he had a men's step meeting at his house with about a dozen guys. And he used to talk about how much it helped him and helped other guys. And he blindsided me one night at a meeting, and he said, I'm starting the meeting up again. I have one seat open, which might have been bullshit. He might have had 10 seats open, but he said, do you want to join in? And it was like when somebody offered me a drink, I couldn't refuse. So I said, okay, I'll go. So I went, and it was 12 guys sitting around this kitchen table. And
Not 12 angry men though, right?
well, some of them were angry. They had almost all of them had taken a fourth and fifth step. I hadn't. So I felt like a fish out of water. But it made me take a look at myself and realize there was more wrong with me than just an alcohol problem, that I had character defects or shortcomings, whatever you want to call them, that I needed to address. And there was a guy at that meeting, not the guy who hosted the meeting, but there was another guy every week. He used to say, you've got to take a fourth and fifth step. You've got to take a fourth and fifth step. And it was kind of intimidating. I didn't like it, but finally, after one meeting, I sucked my guts up. I went up to him and I said, I've never taken a fourth and fifth step. How do I get started? I thought for sure he'd jump down my throat and say, what, are you kidding me? You've been here for 2 years. You haven't taken a fourth and fifth step. But he said, go to the 12 and 12 book. And he told me the page. And he said, answer the questions. Get something down in writing. Don't beat yourself up over it. That's a way to get started on a fourth and fifth. So I said, okay. So then I had to ask him who I should take it with. And I was also scared to death that he was going to say him, which I didn't want to do at all. But he pointed me in the direction of somebody else. And he said, it'll be the feedback you get. And it was true. I sat in the guy's car for 3 hours and I had stuff written down and I talked. And this guy, he told me about his experience. And I wound up going to that meeting for like 3.5 years, and like a fourth and fifth step a few times because of it. And AA is just, the steps gave me a way of life. There were little things I learned in there about be a friend amongst friends, be a worker amongst workers, do the work that's in front of you, treat people the way you'd like to be treated. And there's one sentence in there somewhere. It says, alcoholics are people that have never had a true relationship with another human being. And even when I still read that today, it's almost like it slaps me across the face because I'm an introvert by nature. I never had a true relationship with another human being. That one really jumped that at me. Back it up to the beginning. I'm a native Bostonian. I grew up right outside Boston, oldest of 4 children. My parents weren't alcoholics.
I was going to ask that earlier, so I'm glad you just...
I didn't see a lot of drinking around my house. I'm the oldest, and I was the trailblazer in my family as far as drinking and alcohol. I mean, I've got a brother that suffers from this disease. He's younger than I am. He's out in the wilderness. He tried getting sober a number of years ago, and he went back out, and he's still out there. I don't have any regrets about my upbringing. It wasn't perfect by any means, but it was okay. I mean, parents, they were hardworking people. They did the best they could. I was the first in my family to graduate from college. I mean, I picked up my first drink when I was 16, and I was a junior in high school. Guys I went to high school with drank before I did, and they used to tell me how good it made them feel. I played basketball in high school. I remember asking this guy in the basketball team, Tony, I said, he had said he had drank. I said, what's it like when you drink? And he said, they went over to somebody's house. Their parents went away for the weekend. He said, we watched the Celtics on Lakers from the West Coast. And we got some pizza and we got some beer. And the game ended and we shut the TV off and we slept like babies. that sounded great to me. Probably for the first 2 years that I drank, that's the way it was. I got feeling good. There were no jackpots. A couple of times my parents caught me drinking, but I got beyond that. But I went away to college when I was 18. I went to college in New Hampshire, and my family now was living in New Jersey. And my drinking took right off when I went to college. I went from drinking a six-pack once in a while to drinking all weekend long till 5 years later when I got out of college. I was just drinking all the time. Now I could drink in bar rooms, which I really liked. Let's say from the time I was 18 until I was 36, when I finally got sober, alcohol was always a good idea, and nothing got in the way of me picking up a drink. I never said no when somebody said, let's go drinking. I'd said yes, and I'd be on a dead run to the next bar or wherever I was drinking.
I think you touched on it earlier too. It's the connection of, I could always make a friend by buying a shot or having a beer or going to the bar. Like, it didn't seem like a lot of work, if you will. It didn't require like planning or having a commonality other than the drink.
No.
And then when the drink took effect, I took less effect. And it's like an isolator's perfect storm, because you start isolating less, and the thing you're doing is poison. It's death for me. But it was the connection point of most of my friendships.
It wasn't until I got sober I heard a guy say that when a drunk gets in trouble, his or her drinking buddies walk out of their life and their real friends walk into their life. And that's what happened to me. I mean, like I said, I barely knew my lawyer. Then I didn't know this guy who started taking me to meetings. And then after 2 months, I started going to meetings on my own. And I went into these rooms that were filled with strangers. I didn't know anyone. And he instilled something in me, this guy that took me to meetings. We used to go to the same meetings all the time. One thing that impressed me was, well, we'd go to the meetings. He'd introduce me as being new. I'm checking things out, I hated that. I wanted to be invisible. I didn't want anyone to know I was there. But when we went back to that meeting for the second time, and definitely by the third time, I'd go in and people would say, hey, Dave, how you doing? And I'm going, Jesus, these people remember who I am, and they're asking me how I'm doing. So when I started to go to meetings on my own, I went to the same schedule of meetings, not in the same location, different locations, but the same meetings. And the same thing happened. People would ask me how I was doing, and that impressed me. I mean, I didn't know these people. They really didn't know me, but I became a familiar face. And even today, when I go to live meetings, I like to see familiar faces. I like to see the same people that show up all the time. For the most part, it tells me they're serious about staying sober like I am.
I thought about today, and something it used to be talked about in live meetings. I don't know about online, or maybe it's more so online. People do it. But for me, things are running late. It feels like I'm an alcoholic, so the world is ending. And I'm like, why is it like, and guess what? It's okay. You can go to a meeting if it's 15 minutes late, and people are just happy to see your face and that you're there. They're not thinking, oh, why were they late? Why were they not here on time? They're just like, it's so nice to see a familiar face. And you can, 30 minutes of a meeting, 15 minutes of a meeting are better than 0 minutes of a meeting. And I remember I struggled with that in the beginning. If I were late, I would just skip. And it's just because it was like an ego thing in the beginning, I think, of, oh, everyone's going to notice I'm late. I want to be invisible. And guess what? I think if you haven't heard yet and you're listening, you're new, go to the 50. It doesn't go to 5 minutes, honestly. Like it is, I think. What do you think? Don't you think it's nicer to see someone's face, even if it's the last 10 minutes of the meeting? Because it's like hey, this person is just as serious as I am. And you're not thinking, oh, they missed the first 50 minutes. You're like, just glad to see you're still here, still sober, still trying.
Yeah, but even when I go back to live meetings, I go to mostly Zoom meetings now, but when I go to live meetings, it's good to see people that I used to see before. And who knows why people come in late? Maybe they have a good reason for it. I don't know. I don't take people's inventories about stuff like that. I learned not to anyway. Maybe in the beginning I did. I used to So you can't, I show up on time. Why can't you? You know, I used to say that to
And that's what I'm
myself.
saying, like,
Yeah.
but it's not how it's looked at, and that was probably more in my head. And that's what, like, doing a fourth step is, like, what taught me some of those, that ego, those, why do I think I'm so important? Like, and again, sometimes it's just a nice check-in.
Yeah.
I like just even hearing the beginning of a meeting. If I have to leave early, it's it's like a mental check-in, if you will. I mean, an hour is not very long, but in a busy day, it's still better to show up and get something.
Yeah.
And rather than, I think, what you had said, like isolating, and that's common for, I think, a lot of alcoholics, especially in the beginning. I don't want to be in the, I want to be in the background, even though internally we really are like screaming for connection. But and we're also in our head like, please don't talk to me, don't say I'm new, don't introduce me. Like, I just want to be in and out. And there's a reason it helps. It just doesn't feel like it at first. It feels a little uncomfortable.
Yeah. In the beginning, when I went to meetings, I thought everyone in the room was staring at me, and turns out they weren't. You know, they could care less. I'm going to get over that stuff along the way. If I could just back up a bit about my 20 years of drinking, it wasn't all jackpots. It wasn't all DUIs, although I did that probably total about a half a dozen automobiles along the way. But there were nights, like I said, I could go out and have a few drinks, get feeling good, and go home without incident. And then there were nights when I wanted to do that and, you know, I'd drink myself into a blackout or get into a jackpot. And wasn't until after I got sober I realized that I was just rolling the dice. When I picked up a drink, I didn't know where it was going to take me. That's still true today. But there were, I can think of one red flag along the way. In my first DUI, there was no drumbeat about drunk driving at that time. This was like 1975, but I had to go to they called it a community alcohol safety program. I had to take classes a couple of nights a week, and they made you look at your drinking. And
At that time, they didn't recommend AA though, right? Like now, today, if you get a DUI, you're recommended.
right.
But in 75, it wasn't recommended AA yet, right?
They suggested it, but they didn't make you go to any meetings or, but there were two things I remember. One was, it was a woman that ran the classes and used to hand out a sheet of paper each week, and you had to record your drinks. And this was like just a regular 8x11 sheet of paper. And I knew guys I drank with who had DUIs, and they showed that to them. And they said, start lying your ass off, because the way you drink, you'll be going to that meeting for the rest of your life. And I could have filled up about 20 pages with what I drank. So I'd lie and, I only had 2 drinks this night. I usually had 2 drinks in the first 15 minutes. And but the other thing that really, when I think back at it, she said, if you're a blackout drinker, you have a drinking problem. And by then I had been blacking out, not every time I drank, like I said, but I've been blacking out. But, and I knew I was a blackout drinker, but this was just her theory and didn't apply to me. And that didn't alter my drinking at all. Eventually I went back to drinking the way I had before. And then my second DUI was like 1980 or something like that. And this time I lost my license for a year. I drove without a license for a year, drove drunk, drove involved.
I love the honesty. You're like, they took it away, but the honesty
Yeah.
is you didn't suffer the repercussion. You just, the risk of driving without a license.
Yeah, but the second DUI didn't get my attention as far as my drinking was concerned. I just continued to drink the way I had. And finally, in 84, that last night I drank, that got my attention. So those are a couple of red flags along the way that I chose to ignore at that time. And every night, and like I said, every night wasn't a blackout or passing out or making an ass out of myself or a jackpot. There were some nights, I had fun drinking. I had fun. Is that cliche? It's fun with trouble. And then at the end, just trouble,
I would say, at least for me, I know it's not like I poured a drink and was like, my goal was to black out. It was just the amount of alcohol that I would progressively start drinking, and I would end up blacking out. But it's not that intended to necessarily. Sometimes if I were like angry or celebrating some big accomplishment or, something tragic that happened, but I don't know that it kind of gets away from you, like if you were to tally your drinks. I mean, I was just thinking, I'm like, when I was drinking, I'd be like, go ahead and put 5 because I'm about to do 5 shots of Jameson to start off. So just go ahead. Don't bother picking up the pencil again and again. And also, what counts as 1? Because my shot glasses were a rocks glass that were like, I didn't even know the 1-2 fingers thing because until I got sober and I heard it on Mad Men, I think. And I was like, oh, that's what that means. I'm like, I went way above that. I'm like, keep going. Just don't get tired because I'll drink it faster than you can pour it. Yeah. And I look at back now, I don't know how I lived, but I can't even imagine. I seriously can't even imagine drinking. I don't know. It's just, but again, it's the part of alcohol that once I take a sip, the alcohol's in control. It has nothing to do with me anymore. Again, it can, if I try to say, I'm going to have just 1 drink tonight and I'm going to be calm. After that first drink in sin, I'm like, what's 2 going to hurt? What's 3 going to hurt? Well, I'm already here. There's no stop.
Yeah.
And I could sometimes contain myself. Like you said, not every night was a blackout. Like if I were, and sports was a big thing in my life. I loved sports and sports and drinking and sports bars, just all hand in hand.
Me too.
I'm so grateful. Like today, Dallas Stars plays tonight, and I love sports sober. You get to remember it. You get to feel the passion. I was so numb because I was so focused, and I would I don't know if you did like the drinking games, oh, let's take a shot when they like score a goal or a big play happens. Like it was touchdown for Cowboys, just these big plays, and it's shots. And by the end of the game, I was like passed out. And now I can't imagine wanting to take away. I'm like, absolutely. I want to watch this game. I care about, I enjoy it so much more.
Today, I like watching games right where I'm sitting right now. My TV's at the other side of the room. I know I'll remember all the plays. The line to the men's room is shorter. The concession.
I don't want to even get up to get a soda because I don't want to miss. Like my husband will say, "Wait, we're gonna wait till they do an ice change, till get drink refills, or just like non-alcoholic, just water." Because we care about the sport. But if I was drinking and when I was drinking, the drinks were always the most important, and making sure everyone had a refill or a shot ready, or we were playing some sort of a commonality to. It's like the sport was second. Drinking was always first.
The sport was like a vehicle to get me to a bar or something to drink a lot of the time. And I had Celtic season tickets back when John Havlicek, Dave Cowens played, and went to a lot of games. And sometimes I remember the game, sometimes I wouldn't. And I'd
always get up early to go get another drink because I didn't want to wait for the long line.
Yeah.
Or that was my excuse again. I don't know. I don't think I really cared about the line. I think my truth was I wanted another drink, and I can find like, oh, well, there's leave early, skip the line, get ahead of the crowd. And the reality was I just wanted more alcohol. Yeah. And I'm again, beyond every time sports come up, I'm like, I can't imagine wanting to go back to that life. I don't miss it at all.
I don't miss anything about my drinking life. Like I said,
But I thought I would.
I thought I might initially, but I just like waking up sober every morning and clear-headed and not wondering what I did last night, or if I passed out or blacked out or stepped on somebody's toes or insulted somebody. And when we were talking about recording drinks, and when I was 9 months sober, I had to go to because it was the 3rd DUI, I had to go to a state-ordered program. It was out like in central Massachusetts, and it was a residential program. You had to go there for 2 weeks, and there were about 200 people in there. Everyone was a repeat offender like I was. There were like 14 counselors, and I counted 11 of them were in AA. It was all AA all day long. We took classes, and everyone was assigned an individual counselor. And I got assigned a woman who wasn't in AA, and she started asking me questions. She didn't understand why I couldn't remember how much I drank in the course of a night, how many drinks I had. Finally, I said, I'm an alcoholic. I don't count drinks. I just start drinking and I don't stop. Out of the 200 people that were there, and it was mostly men, but some women, I bet 150 of them had no intention of getting sober from what I saw. And I'm glad I was 9 months sober when I went there, and that I had a background in AA, because I made the most of it. I didn't like it, I had to take 2 weeks vacation. I had to pay to go there, but I got the most out of it. And if I was drinking like some of those other people were, it just would have gone in one ear and out the other ear.
And honestly, that's another really good point in early sobriety too. So another recommendation I was given is not all meetings are equal, and some are better than others, but it also might be me that it could be 2 identical meetings on 2 different days, and I can take it either as I got nothing, and the even identical meeting, identical topic. The other one the other day, it hits home, and sometimes it just takes, I don't love the, through osmosis metaphor, like if you just sit there, but I always do believe that if you continuously keep going to meetings, eventually, if you're alcoholic like I am, something will hit you at the time it's supposed to. And you might have already heard it and been like, oh, that doesn't really relate to me because of the attitude or how you're hearing it that day. Eventually, you're like, oh, wait. And it clicks. And it's amazing when you do hear your story, and it's then the ripple effect happens of you start to see the relatability and even the stories you don't relate to.
But the trick to all that is you have to go to meetings to hear that.
You do.
I wasn't going to hear it at home, walking down the street, at work. Definitely wasn't going to hear it in the bar rooms I drank in, that's for sure. But even that night when that guy said, if you can no longer drink in safety, you're an alcoholic. Like I said, I don't doubt for 2 seconds that had been said at other meetings that I went to. But this one night, my ears were wide open. I didn't even know who the guy was. I don't think I've seen him since, but it stuck with me. I remember going to a meeting, and it was a woman who was a lot younger than I was, saying that when she was drinking, self-pity was like a warm bath. And man, could I identify with that, because I love to feel sorry for myself and blame other people. That was another thing at that step meeting they impressed on us, was take the word blame out of your vocabulary. Don't blame people for your drinking problem and the trouble you got yourself into. And then when you were talking about going to different meetings and hearing things, there's a guy I used to talk to all the time. I almost used him like a sponsor, but he said, I don't want to be your sponsor. Call me as a friend. But he used to speak at a lot of meetings. And I said to him, I'm gun shy about raising my hand at a meeting and speaking. You're not. And he said, when you go to a meeting, you look around the room and you see people sitting in the room you just know are going to raise their hand and talk about what they want to talk about. And I said, yeah, pretty much every meeting I go to. He said, get your hand up before they do. He said, and even if they get the hand up before you do, talk about what you want to talk about. Get the meeting going your way. And that's something I try to practice. I don't do it at every meeting. And then when I do go to a meeting, if I don't hear something earth-shattering or hear a lot of wisdom, I also have to look at, did I raise my hand? What part did I play in it? I can raise my hand just like anyone else can and talk about what I want to talk about. Another guy told me, you can talk about whatever you want to talk about at a 12-step meeting, but always bring it back to alcohol. Always bring it back. And then don't sing the blues. He said, are you happy to be sober? And I said, yeah, I'm thrilled. He said, and don't sing the blues. And not everybody does that.
And that's where the step meetings is something I found I enjoyed a lot more. It's all about where you're at in your sobriety. And I don't think one meeting is better than another necessarily. It's all about where I'm at. After I worked the 12 steps, my shares were very different because now it was more of my responsibility to carry the message that we do recover. Wherein when I was working steps, when I shared, I probably shared more towards the struggle, but I always tried to stay in gratitude in my shares. Like but I also in my sobriety, there was never a point where I was like, this sucks. It felt like you said, even in the beginning, just side effects alone. If you start feeling like you're not hungover, like to be less serious or not. And it's what part do I play? But I always try to, when I have shared at meetings, I'm sharing my mess, like that it's work for working the steps. I struggled too, but my job is to the 12th step in my share. And that's kind of what the topic's supposed to be built on. And discussions of each person's viewpoint because everyone's different. Like I didn't get a DUI, but I can 100% relate with your story because there are plenty of times I should have. Plenty. And thankfully I was pretty good about giving up my keys. I didn't really fight people to drink and drive. I'd rather not drive, and maybe that's the benefit of being a woman. But I was just like, I want to be driven. But I relate with the times that I have, and I've seen, like, I could have easily been pulled over. I think that's another thing in sobriety is you learn this, you learn how to identify versus isolate. You find the similarities. I'm no longer looking for the differences like I used to.
But no two stories are the same. And I think it's what alcohol does to you, you know. And if you come into a sobriety meeting, it's a good chance alcohol hasn't served you well in some capacity. It's probably you probably thought you could handle alcohol, but alcohol has handled you. Going back to, raising your hand and speaking at meetings. I follow Chris Herron. I don't know if you know, he is the basketball player, played in the NBA. He's devoted his life to sobriety, but he said when he first got sober, he went to meetings and he wasn't speaking, and a woman older than him came up to him and stood in front of him and said, "Open your mouth to save your ass. We can't help you if we don't know you." And I think that's the truth. You have to let somebody know what's going on with you, I think. At least I did anyway.
You also might have something important. Like, I still am a firm believer that people with some of the least amount of sobriety think that they have nothing to contribute in a meeting. They're like, I don't know it. That is the gold. That is where alcoholics like me, I can't speak for you, but I'm sure you would say the same, that it's like, it takes me back to remind myself how it used to be like, because we get time and space from our last drink. And I am thankfully ingrained how miserable I was in a meeting when someone's not doing the carrying the message part because you're not working the steps. You're helping everyone else in the room by sharing because you're reminding us of when we were first new in the rooms. And we can tell you what worked for us. Again, it's all just experience. And by the time, hopefully, that person shares that's new, you get quite a few different shares that hopefully one spoke to you. Because it's all different.
Yeah.
There are all types of drinkers. But yeah, you're right. You can't know if you don't share. And like I said, really, honestly, you probably have the most valuable information to share if you're new. I've heard wisdom from newcomers that old timers just don't hit because they're in this gratitude mode, and I might not be in gratitude mode right now. I'm in like, my life just got rocked.
Yeah.
Like, so if you're listening, that's you. Yeah, it's honestly, you are doing a service for you and everyone else.
I think it's daunting to go to 12-step meetings in the beginning anyway. At least it was for me. I haven't seen anyone yet who goes to their first 12-step or a sobriety meeting and afterwards rubs their hands together and say, boy, I'm really looking forward to a lifetime of it, right?
No, you usually, I remember what happened, or here in my experience, and mine might be just a tad different because my husband and I did get sober same day, and we were at the same meeting, same back of the corner, and so I kind of did have a sidekick. I wasn't all by myself. Hearing that we were new, everyone came up to us after, keep coming back, gave us a schedule of the meetings. I mean, we got a newcomer packet, and it was a very big meeting that night. Oh, not huge. It was like 40 people. So, I mean, we got a good packet of phone numbers, which we were like, we will never, ever call them. Like that. And I have that packet still. And I don't think I got any phone numbers from the packet, but I can tell you I have every person on that packet's phone number just because I went there every day, multiple times a day. And I keep my newcomer packet just because it's now it's like my desire chip. It's my special memory of a day that like my world changed. But when we left, I could have thrown that in the trash, to be honest. I was like, I'm never, ever calling any of these people. Or one of them said, text me on the side. I was like, they don't mean it. Like, they don't want to hear it. They're just writing that because they have to. Or I also thought the person sharing was like in charge, like, because they had this binder.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay. And that's why we sat in the back, but you learn that it's the whole room. Like, it's not even, it wasn't like a speaker meeting or anything.
Yeah.
It's just, it's wild your first time versus like going in there like it's your second home.
I mean, obviously I've been sober a long time, but I think back fondly on those days of early sobriety. I remember a guy saying, and he's still around today, I still see him at meetings. He said, you'll never have to pick up a drink again. But what he also used to say is, you'll never have to get sober again. And that really resonated with me because I don't want to have to get sober again. I remember what it was like in early sobriety. And he also said, if your head's racing 100 miles an hour, you've come to the right place. And I can remember saying, this is going to be great. They're going to get me sober. And then my head always races. My head will shut off. I did get sober, but after 40 years of sobriety, I'd like to tell you my head shut off, but it's not. I tried meditation and tried reading the Bible and tried other stuff. And what works for me is when my head races, and it races all the time, I just let it go wherever it wants to go. And thankfully, I don't act out on all other things I think about, because if I did, I'd be dead, or I'd be in prison, or be in a locked ward somewhere. So and eventually, sometimes it slows down, and sometimes I can meditate, not by design. Sometimes it shuts off and I'm okay for a little while. And I thought I was alone. I mean, I really thought nobody's head races like mine does, but more and more people say, yep, my head is noisy. It doesn't shut off.
100. Yeah.
My sobriety date, June 30th of 1984. That's when I started the rest of my life. I've been sober over half my life. I'm going to be 77 on the 26th of May. So I've been sober over half my life. And
I was like, for those who can do math.
Yeah. And, I wouldn't have it any other way. I mean, I should be dead for some of the stuff I pulled while I was drinking. And sobriety and 12 steps saved my life. One thing I learned is meetings around here, I'm sure they do it in other places, they describe the disease, and it's threefold. It's physical, mental, and spiritual. And
that's the three sides of the triangle. And that's what each of the words on the triangle stand for.
And I've heard people say it. I'm wired differently to this day. I don't know what it is, but when I pick up a drink, I can't stop drinking. It sets off a physical compulsion. And maybe somebody could examine me someday to find out why I'm that way. But it's a moot point with me today. I can't drink in safety. And once I started to identify as an alcoholic, it was like, now what am I going to do about it? Now that I've counted myself in, am I going to white knuckle it, sit on the edge of my seat and say, like you say, oh, sobriety sucks. I've never said that. Or am I going to go to step meetings and take a look at myself and try to do something about the other things that were wrong with me? And that's what I've done. That's why when you talk about gratitude, I'm grateful every day that I wake up sober and I know that I'm an alcoholic. And there are programs like 12-step, and there's another sobriety platform I go to. And the other thing is I've learned there are other paths to recovery, to sobriety besides 12-step. I mean, this is a platform here, the Sober Banter. And there's a pretty big recovery community here in Marblehead where I live. There's meetings all day long if you want to look for them. And I always say I can't go far in this town without seeing somebody that's in AA, used to be in AA or should be in AA. But when I see somebody that's in AA, I always say, even if we talk for 15 minutes, I said, this counts as a meeting on my meeting scorecard. And all it takes is two people to have a meeting. And yeah, I mean, I'm just glad I'm sober. I've seen my daughter graduate from high school, from college. She got married back in March, and there was an open bar. Yeah, I mean, she drinks, not like I did. And there's a fair amount of booze there. People were drinking. I didn't drink. I didn't feel like drinking. It was a fun time because I was sober. She got married up in Vermont, and it was really nice. And
Weddings are great sober. Another thing I was like, how am I ever, because I was the kind of person that if I didn't hear that there was an open bar, I was like, well, I had a hairbrush that you could pour alcohol. So I would bring my Jameson hairbrush to be like, I'm not going to any wedding without drinking unless I was pregnant. When I was pregnant with Evan, and that was one of the things that validated it to me, that I never drank when I was pregnant. Once I knew, actually, that would be a lie if I say that, because even the night I found out I was pregnant, it was not a good time. We were not trying. This was a very big accident. I mean, Colin and I had been together for like 4 years, and we were living together, not married though, not engaged. And after I found out, drunk, super drunk, found out I was pregnant, peed on like 5 sticks, pretended like, well, what if I hadn't found out till tomorrow, and still went out to the bar and got hammered over it. I was like, this will be my last hurrah. And I never had a drink after that in pregnancy, because I knew, even with the women today that'll say you can have like a glass of wine or whatever, thankfully I had a doctor that like was pretty big on no amount of alcohol is safe for a baby, but I knew I couldn't just have one. I never just wanted one glass. Even in pregnancy, I was like that. I don't want to just have one and then I'll crave more, and then I'm pregnant, and I think my inner core knew that was really probably my first big sign that I had a problem with alcohol. But that's not when I got sober years later. He was 2. So my son technically has seen me drink a lot, but I hope he won't remember it.
how many children do you have?
1.
One, yeah. That's what we had.
Again,
Yeah.
it wasn't planned. And I mean, once we got sober, that was our second full-time job, as you had said. So now we had like 3 full-time jobs. We had money job, recovery job, parent job. So how many years sober when you had your daughter?
About 5 years.
Okay.
That was,
I could see that being
I say this at meetings, but when I'm saying, I was an introvert, I couldn't talk to anybody, before I got sober. And even in sobriety I was locked up inside myself. And especially I couldn't talk to women for whatever reason. I just couldn't. And I was thinking about that today. But I met my wife in a sobriety platform. She's not an alcoholic, but in a sobriety platform. And
I was gonna say, did you like just go hang out around the Al-Anon room?
no.
Like, I'm just gonna...
But anyway, we get married. We just celebrated our 36th anniversary a couple of weeks ago. And
Congratulations.
thanks.
Wow. You got a lot of milestones, like, right?
Yeah, this time of year.
This is the time to be alive.
Yeah, a lot of milestones for me. For
That's amazing.
And, but I always say that, so we get married in May and my daughter was born in November, so you can do the math. And so I went from not being able to talk to women, and now I'm going to be living with two of them for the rest of my life.
Now you're outnumbered.
Yeah, but it's okay. I remember about 6 months before I get married, I bought a condo in Salem, Massachusetts. It was the first time I'd ever saved enough money to buy property, and I was single at the time, and it's a one-bedroom condo. It was a nice place. I was really looking forward to living there by myself for a while, and then, we get married, my wife moved in, and that worked out okay too. But it's one of those things I look back on. Yeah, I mean, sobriety saved my life, and I should be dead, like I said, a couple of times over. And one of the platforms I did find out, I don't know if you've heard of it, it's called the Luckiest Club, but you had, on one of these interviews, you had Allison Deraney.
Mhm.
Allison and I are friends. I
She's
met
great.
her in the Luckiest Club, and I either see her or, in fact, I'll see her in a Zoom meeting tomorrow. She's a moderator, but one of those people I didn't know that I met along the way, and I'm grateful for our friendship. And
She's a good person. She has good sobriety too, and
she's on with another woman. Is it Julie Fontes?
I love Julie.
Yeah,
Julie Fonts.
I think they were on together. And
Oh my God, Julie. So Julie was my very first interview on Sober Banter.
oh, really? Yeah.
I was so nervous, and she is literally just the sweetest person. Actually, yeah, I had both Julie and Allison on an episode of Sober Banter. So,
Yeah, I watched that.
and that was such fun. I've been dealing with long COVID since about a year sober, and it sucks because there is nothing worse. I was feeling the best ever to now my body is infected with this other disease. The only thing that I can compare it to, like you said, is had I not been sober and got this, I would have died. I don't think I'd be alive because my body is like barely hanging on right now without the alcohol, and they can't figure out quite what's causing it. So it's one day at a time, and sobriety has kind of saved my life in autoimmune wise too, because a lot of those same principles of how I got sober I use with having a mystery illness. It's like, well, for today, I'm just going to try and live for today, and we're going to wake up tomorrow and see where we're at tomorrow. All I know is I don't want to drink.
Yeah.
So
That's what it's all about.
yeah. And it's about showing up too, about doing. And sometimes it does. And I'm not here to lie. Like, the whole point of this platform is to be brutal honesty of laughing about, I don't want to go to a meeting, or I don't want to. And I think the best ones are the ones that I actually didn't want to go to.
Yeah.
And I say that every time that I'm like, man, I needed that so much more than I knew. And it really, I used to use the quote, get the body there and the mind will follow.
Yeah.
So, and as an alcoholic, it's like, even with X amount of years in sobriety, there are still things I think we all just don't want to do. I just don't drink over it anymore. And I have to learn to, it's a dubious luxury. That's what Bill says, that dubious luxury I cannot have is I don't get to get angry at the world. I have to actually fix it. Yeah. Because the resentment is what will kill me and make me want to go to a drink. So it's like, oh, I wish I had that dubious luxury to just be mad at the world, but I can't.
I'm the same way. Like, I can go to a live meeting and I get on there all charged up. I'm going to hear some words of wisdom, and I get on and the meeting kind of sucks. It doesn't do anything for me. That's when I have to look at myself, why didn't I raise my hand and say something? But at the same time, I can go to some meeting and, I don't feel like driving down there tonight or today. Same people, same shit, but then I hear something from somebody and I take it with me, and one-liners stick with me more than a lot of the psychobabble and the dogma and stuff like that. And you were talking about people, you can tell whether they have a good program or not. One thing, when I first got sober and I'd see the people I were attracted to, they used to say they wear their sobriety like a loose garment. It rolls off them. They're not telling you what to do. They're telling you what they do. And that's what I try to do today. I don't want to, when I start telling people what to do, I'm trying to give away something I don't have. But if I tell them this is what I've done, and you can take it from there, those are the people I'm attracted to in sobriety.
I did really relate to another creator I've had on here, Paulina Pinsky. She writes Newly Sober on Substack.
Substack, yeah.
Yeah. And it was a post about Instagram and being a creator versus sharing, carrying and hers was even about writing. It wasn't even necessarily sobriety. And I feel that so strongly because there is a part of, I don't want to be the website that's like, download the free copy of how to get sober with 10 days. And here's your 10 hacks to perfect. Like, I feel like that is so not me. And it's also, I don't want to take credit because then I do feel like that's exactly what Bill did write the traditions for, is like, hey, I don't want to like have this marketing program. I just want to share the truth. I want to share that, like, today I have this ulcer on my freaking tongue. My hair is a mess. I am just on cloud 9 with joy from graduation. I just want to soak in that feeling. Equipment's not working. I mean, I could tell you 9 things that make sobriety. Like, I have wrote things, but I just feel so wrong putting it out there. But that seems to be how to create community.
Yeah.
You have to do, this 30-day challenge and
subscribe. Hit the subscribe button.
But I cannot come to this meeting and I'll give you my 10 secrets to sobriety because there really aren't. I could just tell you what we just talked about.
Yeah.
And that's not really a secret. That is information for anyone who wants it.
That's what I heard once. And it's true. And I still use it. Don't drink, go to a meeting, wait for further instructions.
I love that. Wait for further. We'll let you know when you get there.
Yeah.
Like, just
a couple of summers ago, my wife and I were up in Vermont. We went to the Bill Wilson house in East Dorset, Vermont. I don't get that emotional, but when I walked in there, I had a lump in my throat. And I said, this is the place that saved my life. If you're ever in East Dorset, Vermont, it's
yeah, I will. I mean, I'll go visit for sure. I've already planned. I want to go to the Akron, Ohio. I want to go. I love the history of all. I studied it for a while because it wasn't like this big conspiracy. Like, the AA was not born. I mean, it was pretty simple. Yeah. It was a couple guys. They actually met and they're in this Oxford group program, which was very religious. Had opinions, got shut down for those opinions. But they were like, listen, there's still something here. And that's pretty much it. Everything else, it was done on budget. Bill had a lot of struggle of the ego and keeping himself in check while creating this thing. One of the biggest here of my big book, one of my favorite parts, like, I have so many little quotes written in the book, but in the very, very beginning, I have it re-stickered. This book was just written how it used to be in the original edition, which I also have, how 100 men recovered from alcoholism. That was it. It was 100 guys that they're like, hey, this is what's worked for us. Bill was only 2 years sober when he wrote the book. This wasn't some like Mel Robbins empowerment speech. He was a normal guy. And when I first started reading or hearing even the book read, it really didn't connect with me in the way it does today, because I also have to remember this was back in 1930s and 40s. He talks about the stock market crash of the 1920. He was working that. That's where he thought he had arrived. And if you can just put that to 100 years of today. So what I was saying, one exercise that I did was I rewrote some of those step prayers, but in my own words. So trying to find a way to modernize. Now, once you do that and you find a connection, I actually start to appreciate the way Bill wrote it, and I now prefer it that way. But in the beginning, this book was modern at the time it came out. And that's kind of hard to explain to Gen Z at times.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of millennial, Gen Z, like, because my husband's like borderline millennial Gen X because he's 7 years older than me. And we're right borderline. And it's the younger generation or my generation that AA can look strict, but it's really not. Or it can look overly religious and it's not.
No.
It's how, again, and that's where like the different meetings, different styles. I think if I went to a book study in my first year of sobriety or before I was finished working the steps, I'd probably been like, is this really going to keep me sober? I either needed to probably go speaker meetings to hear someone's story or discussion meetings. And usually a newcomer, steps 1, 2, and 3. Those are the meetings I want to go to. And that, the reason they offer the different meetings is because different places in sobriety.
Have you seen the movie, The Bill W. Story?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And I've also done, again, another one of my favorites, a Joe and Charlie study is the tapes.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've heard the Big Book Comes Alive by Joe and Charlie.
No,
Amazing.
No.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I want to run one. I want to hold that meeting. So it is one of my absolute favorite meetings. Once I've also heard Bill speak, I've gone and looked it up. It's on YouTube. It's not like super easy to search for, but actually that's what I need to do is I'm going to put some links on Sober Banter's page. And once you hear him talk, his writing in the book kind of makes more sense because like I said, this book was not written to be your 2025 10 secrets to sobriety. Although I think Bill might have marketed it, like, and that's how you get people to listen. What would it be like instead of the daily reflections? It's like 365 days to change your life.
Yeah.
And it's 365 people, and we have to, again, remember, we're back. This is in the 1920s, and he's just trying to be like, hey, what are some. He just wanted to find a way there wasn't online social media. There was barely phones. And he's like, how can we connect? And at the time, books, magazines, or not magazines, I'm sorry, newspapers. That was it. And
he could market it as 365 excruciating days to get you sober.
Oh my God. Yeah, no, seriously. And I think I respect the simplicity that's behind it too. And the more that's revealed is Bill is just writing from his heart. He's just writing what worked for him. And again, originally 100 other guys. They went to the hospital. They did the footwork. They didn't do it for glory. They didn't do it for fame or fortune. He did it for survival, like most of us.
Yeah. When I went to the Bill Wilson house in Vermont, they showed a copy of, it was his last public speech before he died. And he said, you could probably find it online, but he said, AA will move forward and the sobriety world will evolve, and AA needs to evolve with it, which is, that's why you see all these social platforms today. And I'll go on to some of them, and some of them I think they're along for the ride, and there are other people that are serious about helping people get sober. And one thing a guy said to me when we went to the Bill Wilson house, there was a guy, there's actually a hotel there, a small hotel, and this guy was working there. He was sober like 35 years, but he gave us like a behind the scenes tour. He showed us the room Bill was born in and the bedroom he slept in and stuff. It was really nice. But he said, Muslims go to Mecca, Catholics go to the Vatican, drunks go to East Dorset, Vermont. And it's true.
And what's funny is I can tell you, or I would my guess, if Bill knew that his room he was being bored in was shown, he would be mortified. He'd be like, that does not matter. It's so far from recovering. He'd be like, who cares? Like,
Yeah.
and I know he struggled at the end, and I beyond identify with that because he wanted to, well, what a lot of us, and it makes sense, like even back in the 80s that you talk about, you're going to a course, like an alcohol course, and you're like 11 out of the 12 were in recovery themselves. Because we find like we have this gift, and like isn't the secret of working in life is to like find something that doesn't really feel like work. It's to find something you love doing. And Bill had said like he kind of wanted to go be a counselor in addiction, but there was this conflict because he created this group where it's all based on like it's a free knowledge group, and now he wants to go turn around and now charge. And that was very conflicting. And he also, the bigger thing that he wanted to do was find the next level of how to break alcoholism, like how to get to the people that are homeless, like that can't hear the message in the meeting. He was driven to try and find the next layer.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
No.
But people, and actually, I think from my studies, again, all speculation, I'm in school for addiction. I'm literally, right now, I'm taking class life and development because it's required for psychology and the different experiments of basically nature versus nurture. I just wrote a paper on last night. And, I mean, I get it. It's just like, you want to figure out how to help others in the next step. And Bill was doing that. And when he passed, it was really his wife who was more on the Al-Anon side, saying like, don't change anything, like keep everything as it is, word for word, piece by piece, like don't let it evolve. You need to respect Bill and respect Bob. And I think Bill, honestly, I think he would be proud to see online meetings. I think he would be happy to see the good. I don't know that he would, and of course he would probably know there's people that are going to try and make money off of it. I just talked about that with Tim, that with good comes the opposite, which is like the corruption, the treatment centers that the quote, the heads in beds.
Yeah.
That's not wanting to make people better.
Yeah.
But there are ones that do. And those ones that do, it's unfortunately it's today's world. You got to find a way to like balance that and stay afloat without, it's hard. And I can totally tell that he really struggled at the end of how do we balance this, because it did become a monster and it did take off.
Yeah.
And I don't know how you control that. And he didn't. And that, again, this is before social media.
Yeah. I know it. Yeah.
But could you imagine with a Twitter how it would go? Oh my God. On TikTok, like doing a little big book dance. Like
one thing that impressed me about AA once I started going was this place really runs itself. Nobody's in charge. There are people who would like to be in charge, and they act like.
I was going to say, there's the good and the bad of that.
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
the good and the bad of that.
But I can get a meeting list book and look for a meeting in a particular town, and if it's at such and such a time, I can go there, and there'll be people there. There'll be somebody making coffee, and there'll be a speaker, and if it's a discussion meeting, there'll be people there just raising their hand and talking about what they want to talk about. But it isn't like they get rained out or anything like that, or it's postponed.
No, I walked when it was snowing one year.
Yep.
If I didn't truly believe that myself, I would feel weird starting Sober Banter. And I definitely in the early days talked about how it's the intention, right? And that's what we learn in life is what's my intent? And I kind of do a mini prayer, if you will, before coming on the podcast every single time. It's what am I doing this for? Like kind of like my mission statement. Like who am I doing this for? I'm doing this for, the Rachel that heard other little snippets of podcasts before I got sober. And at the time was like, that sounds like it sucks. And then I'm like, well, they looked happy. What was it? I'm going to go check it out again. See if they're still happy. See if they're still sober. And they're still sober and they're still happy. And I'm over here miserable. And I'm like, gotta figure that out. And eventually I finally found my ways to the rooms and it saved my life. So maybe that can be, and if this isn't it for someone, again, the benefit is I just had a really great meeting with you, David, and I got friends all over the world. That's where another thing I love about AA is I'm like, I can go anywhere and I have friends.
Yeah.
I go to, and the meetings, like when I traveled the first 2 years, I always made sure I knew where the closest meeting was. So I could I'd plan, be like, hey, because I thought I'd get triggered, which I didn't. But I also like just seeing how other states do it.
Yeah. Yeah. The format is different in other places. I've been in meetings in other parts of the country, other parts of the world, but the message is the same. And
it's all the same, and it's fun, and it's like, man, I have a host of friends all over, and there's literally 24-hour meetings. So I could wake up in the middle of the night, and I bet Bill would be amazed by that. I bet he would be so proud of that. I don't think he would be like, they're not doing it right, or they're not reading the traditions or the book, or again, even touring his house, he'd be like, what? I'm just a normal guy.
Like that.
I was a stockbroker who had alcoholism and would go to the loony bin. And he found the secret with Dr. Bob. And I think it's just really, the history makes it so beautiful to me. And I love that. I really love that. And I want to thank you so much for your time.
Thanks.
Thank you for sharing this story. Thank you so much. I think this is going to help. You had a lot of things that were a lot of really, really relatable and really good sobriety. And again, the compliment, I can tell you run a good program, and happy early belly button birthday and early actual sobriety birthday and happy belated anniversary. So just full of celebration. Thank you for sharing that on Sober Banter.
Thanks, Rachel.
So,
and
of course.
If you ever get up to Boston, contact me. We can meet up somewhere. I'd love to do that.
I will. That would be another. Absolutely. I want to go so many different places to see so many different people. I would love to organize a trip to see the Bill Wilson house or do something in Akron even.
Yeah.
I want to go so badly to those places. So yeah, I will definitely contact you. Thank you for listening to Sober Banter. Have a good day.